The race for the White House is heating up. A new poll by RMG Research currently shows a toss-up between Harris and Trump. However, there is a shift in one poll that could mean the Harris bounce is over. Joining us now with the latest numbers is the president of RMG Research, pollster, analyst, and host of the Scott Rasmussen Show. Scott Rasmussen, great to see you as always. Thanks for joining us. The latest national numbers show that among registered voters, Harris does lead by 1 point. But when you factor in the voters who lean Democrat or lean Republican, Harris goes to 47%, Trump falls to 46%, meaning the race gets even tighter. So are we starting to see this Harris honeymoon period over now?
Yes, I think that's a fair statement. You know, when she first became the nominee, people didn't know who she was. The numbers looked like the Trump-Biden numbers had looked before that infamous debate. And then I think for a lot of people, there was a great sigh of relief. Many Americans didn't want to see a Trump-Biden rematch, so they were happy to have that opportunity to have somebody else. Harris went ahead by 5 points in our polling. It's back to a toss-up. And Jan, let me be really clear about this. You're going to hear lots of predictions, but at this point in time, anybody who tells you with confidence they know who's going to win is either lying to you or deluding themselves.
We have a long way to go still, as you always say.
We do.
A lot can change. The Trump-Harris national polls are close. We're also seeing the swing state polls very close as well. When Biden was the Democratic nominee, swing states like North Carolina, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona were all kind of leaning in Trump's direction and the GOP's favor. And then you could see sort of this clearer path to the 270 electoral college votes that are necessary. But what does this mean now that Harris is the new Democratic nominee? Are some of these swing states now back in play? And what is the determining factor here for that?
So there are two sets of swing states that we've been talking about throughout the campaign. There are four in the South: Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, and Georgia. All of those, as you said, were leaning towards Trump early on. Right now, they're back in play. The other three states were Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, that blue wall, the Midwestern states. Those two are in a toss-up status right now. What the difference is, with Biden in the race, he had to win all three of those northern or Midwestern states to have a shot at winning the White House. For Kamala Harris, you know, she could pull off a surprise, perhaps pick off some of these southern states. She has more opportunities, more pathways to victory.
Interesting.
But yeah, people still don't know much about her on policies.
Right. And you just mentioned Michigan. I think you said Ohio. You meant Wisconsin. Michigan,
No,
Wisconsin.
Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Yes.
One of the key questions in the race for the White House is whether the Trump campaign can focus voter attention on issues, because right now Trump does have an edge on the top issues for voters. Those top issues, as we know, inflation, the economy, and immigration. In fact, 27% of voters say inflation is their top issue, 16% say the economy, and 15% say it is immigration. Those are the top three. Now, on each of those three issues, voters trust Donald Trump more than Kamala Harris. Let's take a look at what the polls show. In fact, on immigration, right now, Trump has a 16-point advantage. You can see 51% on 35%. Voters were asked, who do they trust most on a particular issue? When it came to the economy, Trump, again, 13-point advantage, 50% to Harris's 37%, and even on inflation, Trump's 50% to Harris's 38%. Again, a 12-point advantage on that. So when you look at something like this, what do you make of this? The fact that of the top three issues, Trump still leads voters' trust on those issues by double digits.
You know, if you look at the fundamentals, starting with Joe Biden's job approval rating, and so the incumbent administration, you look at these issue polls, Donald Trump should be leading by a wide margin. But there's two reasons he's not. One is, and I think a polite way of saying is, he has a little bit of baggage that makes some people hesitant to vote for him. The other is, people don't know much about Vice President Harris yet. They don't know her positions on the issues beyond the sense that she's very pro-choice on the issue of abortion. So those two factors are keeping this race close. One of them is not going to change. Donald Trump is who he is. People know him, they love him, or they hate him. Kamala Harris, we're just getting to know her, and that could have an impact on the race.
And to your point, Scott, typically Democratic and Republican conventions give candidates a bounce. The DNC starts on Monday. We know there could be as many as 100,000 protesters at the DNC outside the convention. Some political pundits have said in this case, though, we could see the opposite for Harris when it comes to that sort of convention bounce, because you got progressive Democrats who supported her based on her past record. Now they say, you know, she turns, like she changes her stance on some of those most controversial issues, they might not be able to support her, whereas moderate Democrats won't support some of her past progressive policies. What's your thoughts on this?
I think first off, Kamala Harris had a quote unquote convention bounce before the convention. When she was introduced as the new nominee, she got that bounce. People were excited to see a new person in the midst. So she's already had that bounce. I think the upside for her, even if things go very well, is pretty limited. And yes, there is a strong potential for some of the protests or some of the response to the protests to have an impact that could be negative. But this is a crazy year.
Yeah,
I mean, if we think back on the things we've talked about over the last month, who knows? One thing that I would focus on is it's the issues that impact people on a day in, day out basis and what they see, rather than nuanced positions that will have an impact on the polls and ultimately on who wins in November.
Have about 30 seconds. The race for the Senate tight. Republicans certain to pick up the Manchin seat in West Virginia. So now you got the Senate split 50-50. So when it comes to the GOP gaining control of the Senate, this Montana seat has now become the most important in the country between Democrat incumbent Jon Tester and GOP newcomer Tim Sheehy. What's your data telling you at this point?
Well, that race, too, is very close, and it does mean control of the Senate. The key point here is going to be there are a number of Trump voters, because Trump's going to win Montana big, a number of Trump voters who are saying right now they will vote for Jon Tester. If they come back home to the Republican Party, then the Republicans will have control of the Senate regardless of who wins the White House.
Scott Rasmussen with RMG Research and, of course, the Scott Rasmussen Show. We appreciate you joining us this morning here on the National Desk.
Thanks,
Have a great week. Thank you.